Austin, Texas, 1983. Loyd Blankenship is 18 years old, high school dropout, works part-time at a record store on Lamar Boulevard, makes $3.50 an hour, spends most of it on phone calls, not normal phone calls, long-distance calls, cross-country calls, calls to other teenagers he's never met in person, in New York, in Los Angeles, in Chicago, in rooms that look exactly like his, dark, monitors glowing, stacks of printed manuals, the hiss of a modem connecting at 1,200 baud. Loyd's monthly phone bill in October 1983, $340. His monthly paycheck, $280. He is technically bankrupt. But Loyd Blankenship has a theory that the largest corporation in American history, AT&T, the Bell system, 22 subsidiaries, $150 billion in assets, and a monopoly on every single telephone call made in the United States, has a flaw. A structural, catastrophic, embarrassing flaw. And it's sitting right there in the phone lines running through the walls of his apartment. He just needs to find the right tone. Within 2 years, Loyd will go from $3.50 an hour to free calls anywhere on Earth. Within 3, he'll be reading the internal databases of the most powerful communications company in history. Within 36 months, a teenager in Austin, Texas, will know more about how America's phone network actually works than most of the engineers who built it. And on the night he gets arrested, sitting in a holding room at 11:47 p.m. on January 8, 1986, he will write 23 paragraphs that will be read by more people than anything AT&T ever published. But right now, it's 1983. Loyd is staring at a phone bill he can't pay. And he just heard about something called a blue box. Here's what you need to understand about AT&T in 1983. The Bell system wasn't just a phone company. It was infrastructure. It was government. It was the nervous system of the United States. Every call made in America, local, long distance, military, hospital, emergency, ran through Bell's copper wire. The company had built the network over 100 years, burying cable under every city, stringing wire across every mountain range. By 1983, it carried over 600 million calls per day. AT&T's annual revenue, $65 billion. Its monopoly had just been broken by antitrust regulators. But in 1983, the breakup hadn't taken full effect yet. They still controlled everything, and they absolutely believed, that their network was impenetrable. They were wrong. The flaw wasn't hidden. It wasn't obscure. It was engineering arrogance. AT&T had built their entire long-distance network on a system called in-band signaling. Here's what that means. When you made a long-distance call in 1983, 2 things traveled down the same wire: your voice and the control signals, the instructions telling the network where to route the call, when to bill you, when to hang up. Same wire, same channel, same frequency range. The control signal that reset a long-distance trunk line to idle, ready for a new call, was a single sustained tone, 2,600 hertz, the frequency of a high-pitched whistle. If you played that tone into a phone line during a call, the network thought the caller had hung up. The line reset, but you were still there, still connected, still holding a live, billable, untracked connection to a long-distance trunk. From that idle trunk, you could dial anywhere, for free, without billing, without routing records, without a trace. That was the blue box, a device that generated 2,600 hertz and the multi-frequency tones used to dial through. John Draper had discovered it in 1971, using a toy whistle from a box of Cap'n Crunch cereal. Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak had built blue boxes and sold them out of their dorm room at Berkeley for $150 each in 1972. By 1983, the plans had been printed in underground newsletters, passed hand-to-hand at computer clubs, shared over early bulletin board systems. Thousands of teenagers knew the theory. Very few had actually built one that worked. Loyd Blankenship was about to become one of them. He didn't build it alone. He found the plans on a bulletin board system called Metal Shop, running out of a teenager's bedroom in St. Louis. The schematics called for a 741 op-amp chip, a crystal oscillator, and a handful of capacitors. Total parts cost from Radio Shack, $11. Loyd spent a weekend at his kitchen table with a soldering iron and a borrowed oscilloscope. First attempt failed. Frequency was off by 40 hertz. Not enough to trigger the trunk reset. Second attempt, 2,598 hertz. Close. Third attempt, Sunday afternoon, after rewinding the oscillator coil by hand, 2,600.3 hertz. Close enough. Loyd picks up his phone, dials a long-distance number to Chicago, waits for it to connect, then holds the blue box speaker to the receiver. The tone plays for 0.8 seconds. Click. Silence. Not disconnected silence. Active silence. The silence of a live trunk line. Reset. Waiting. Loyd dials a number in New York using the multi-frequency tones. The phone rings. Someone answers.
What's that, buddy?
Loyd had called a payphone on 42nd Street, and a stranger picked up, confused. Loyd hung up. He had just made a free long-distance call. He had just bent a wire the size of his arm around the entire billing infrastructure of the most powerful telecom company in history. He sat in his kitchen for a long time. He was 18 years old. He had $11 in parts, and he had just broken AT&T. Before we dive deeper into this story, please take a second to hit the like button and subscribe. It helps this channel grow and lets us keep uncovering stories like this. Loyd had rules, developed over the first 6 months after close calls and near misses made him cautious. Rule 1. Never make the same call twice from the same line in the same week. Rule 2. Never talk about the calls on the calls. Rule 3. Never route through the same trunk sequence twice in a row. Rule 4. If a call sounds strange, echo, lag, a second click, hang up immediately. Rule 5. Never use your real name. The name he used, the mentor. Not because it sounded cool, because that's what he was doing. Teaching, explaining, writing. Every time he accessed a new system, a new exchange, a new internal network, he documented it, wrote it up, posted it to the bulletin boards. The community that found those posts called itself the Legion of Doom. Not a gang, not an organization with meetings and membership cards. A loose network of teenagers and 20-somethings across the United States who shared one obsession: understanding how systems worked, not to destroy them, to know them. Invisible to AT&T. And they were learning everything. September 1984. Loyd makes a discovery that changes the scope of everything. He has been exploring AT&T's internal operator networks, using the blue box to access trunk lines that normal customers never reached. Maintenance lines, test circuits, operator consoles. He had found several internal numbers by trial and error and by trading information with other Legion members. Then he finds a number that responds differently. Not an operator, not a test tone, a database prompt. 3 letters appear on his terminal screen. COS Cosmos. Computer System for Mainframe Operations. The internal database AT&T used to manage every single telephone account in the United States. Billing records, service orders, account status, install dates, customer names and addresses, and, crucially, internal switch configurations. The routing tables that told AT&T's network how to direct every call. Loyd sits very still. He types a customer account number he had written down from a phone bill a friend had shown him. The screen populates: name, address, account balance, call history, service type. He is looking at a private citizen's complete telephone record, unencrypted, unprotected, accessible from any phone line in the country, if you knew the right trunk sequence and the right prompt. He stays in the system for 11 minutes, then he backs out carefully, disconnects, sits in the dark. He doesn't tell most of the Legion what he found, not yet. Not until he understands exactly how far it goes. Over the next 4 months, Loyd maps Cosmos. He documents the prompts, the command structure, the query syntax. He finds that the database doesn't just hold residential accounts. It holds business accounts, government accounts, military exchange listings, unlisted numbers, numbers not even in AT&T's public directories. He also finds something that makes his stomach drop: a separate system, accessible through Cosmos, a database he doesn't recognize at first. Routing tables for a specific class of numbers, 3-digit numbers that override the normal switching logic, numbers that get priority treatment across the entire network. He pulls the documentation, Reads it, 911, the E911 system, the emergency services routing database for the entire southeastern United States. Loyd Blankenship, sitting in his apartment in Austin in early 1985, is looking at the internal architecture of America's emergency call network. He doesn't publish what he found. This is important. Loyd had a code. The Legion of Doom had a code. Explore, but don't damage. Read, but don't change. Know, but don't use for harm. It wasn't written down anywhere. It was just understood. You didn't crash switches. You didn't delete records. You didn't cut people off from emergency services. The temptation wasn't to destroy. The temptation was to show someone, to prove that this existed, that a teenager in Texas could sit in his kitchen and read the routing tables for 911 calls, and that AT&T had no idea. Loyd writes it up, documents the access method, describes what he found, posts it to a private distribution on the bulletin board network under his handle. Somewhere in that distribution is an informant. The Secret Service began monitoring bulletin board systems in 1984, not because of Loyd specifically, because of credit card fraud, because of stolen passwords, because of enough complaints from enough corporations that the federal government decided the hacker community was an organized criminal enterprise. They weren't wrong that crimes were being committed. They were wrong about almost everything else. An agent named Timothy Foley was assigned to the Chicago field office in late 1984, tasked with building a case against the hacker networks that were costing American corporations an estimated $140 million per year in unauthorized access and phone fraud. Foley's team read the bulletin boards, collected handles, built a map of who was connected to whom. The name that appeared most often, whose posts were read most widely, whose documentation was most technically precise, the Mentor. By mid-1985, they had traced the handle to an address in Austin. They had warrants. They were building toward a sweep. Operation Soon Devil wouldn't happen until 1990. But for Loyd Blankenship, the clock was already running. Loyd is 20 years old and has been living two lives for 2 years. By day, stocking records at the store on Lamar, making $3.50 an hour, paying rent on a one-bedroom apartment, living a life that looks completely ordinary to anyone who doesn't know him. By night, somewhere else entirely. He has, by this point, made free calls to 19 countries. He has accessed Cosmos and its branches at least 40 times, never changing anything, never staying longer than 15 minutes. He has documented 7 separate internal AT&T systems, several of which AT&T's own security team didn't know were externally accessible. He has taught, through his posts, dozens of other hackers the techniques he developed. He has cost AT&T in unbilled long-distance charges an estimated $15,000 to $20,000 over 2 years. A number that sounds large until you consider that AT&T's annual revenue in 1985 was $34 billion. He knows the risk. He has known it for a long time. Rule 4. If something sounds strange, hang up. He has hung up dozens of times when he felt the call felt wrong, too much echo, a delay that suggested a recording device, a click he didn't make. But knowing the risk isn't the same as seeing it end. January 8th, 1986, 9:22 p.m., Austin, Texas. Loyd is at his terminal. He's drafting a document, not a hack, not a technical post, something different, something he's been thinking about for months, a response to the way the mainstream press talked about hackers, as criminals, as vandals, as teenagers who broke things for fun and deserved whatever they got. He wanted to explain what it actually was, what it felt like, why they did it. At 9:47 p.m., there is a knock at the door. He already knows. He opens the door, 3 men, 2 in suits, 1 in a jacket with USSS on the back. Loyd Blankenship? Yes. We have a warrant for your arrest. We also have a warrant to search these premises. They come in. They know what to look for. They find the blue box reassembled in a coffee tin on his desk in under 4 minutes. They find the printed documentation of the Cosmos access. They find the terminal logs. They find the bulletin board correspondence. They find everything. He is handcuffed at 9:54 p.m. He sits in the back of a government vehicle while agents inventory his apartment. The street outside is quiet. 10:07 p.m. on a January night in Austin. He is taken to the Secret Service field office, put in a holding room. He is not booked immediately. Processing takes time. He is left alone with a legal pad and a pen. At 10:31 p.m., Loyd Blankenship picks up the pen and starts writing. He writes for 1 hour and 16 minutes, 23 paragraphs. No title at first, just a response to everything. The raid, the agents, the look on the landlord's face, the coffee tin with the blue box inside, the 2 years of exploring a system that never knew he was there. He writes about being caught at school reading a textbook he wasn't supposed to have, about teachers who couldn't answer questions, about boredom as a weapon that got turned inward, about finding at age 13 a modem and a phone line and a world that had no fences. He writes, "My crime is that of curiosity." He writes about the phone bills, the exploration, the months inside AT&T's systems, not with malice, but with the same drive that makes a person climb a mountain because it's there and nobody told them they could. He titles it, "The Conscience of a Hacker," but it will always be called something else. 11 days later, when a friend types it up and posts it to Frack Newsletter, issue 7, it will be called by the name that sticks, the Hacker's Manifesto. Here is what happens next. The document spreads, not in months, in days, copied from board to board, passed from terminal to terminal, printed and pinned to dorm room walls and computer lab bulletin boards across the United States, then Europe, then Japan. By the end of 1986, it has been translated into 12 languages. By 1990, it will have been read by an estimated 2 million people. The prosecution of Loyd Blankenship proceeds more quietly than the Secret Service had hoped. His lawyer argues that the Cosmos access produced no financial gain, caused no damage, and altered nothing. The blue box charges are real. AT&T's stolen long-distance calls are documented, but the dollar figure is modest against federal prosecution costs. Loyd pleads to misdemeanor charges, pays fines, does community service, no federal prison. His documentation of AT&T's vulnerabilities, the Cosmos access method, the E911 routing exposure, is handed to AT&T by the Secret Service as part of the agreement. AT&T fixes the vulnerabilities within 14 months. By 1988, Loyd Blankenship is working at a gaming company in Austin called Steve Jackson Games, writing science fiction role-playing content, legal work, a normal job, a normal life, at first glance. But people in the security industry have read the manifesto, and they know the mentor's documentation work, the precision of what he mapped inside AT&T's systems, the methodology, the thoroughness. In 1990, the Secret Service raids Steve Jackson Games as part of Operation Sun Devil, the big sweep of the hacker community. They confiscate computers, manuscripts, everything. They are looking for evidence of a criminal conspiracy. They find a role-playing game manuscript. The raid becomes famous for a different reason. It eventually produces one of the landmark civil liberties cases in digital history. Loyd Blankenship testifies. He helps found the Electronic Frontier Foundation alongside Mitch Kapor and John Perry Barlow, the organization that will spend the next 3 decades defending digital rights in court. Then he goes to work as a security consultant, gaming industry first, then financial services, then federal government contractors. His specialty, finding vulnerabilities in systems before attackers do, documenting them, explaining them, fixing them. Same skill set, different employer. By 2000, Loyd Blankenship was charging $400 an hour for security consultation. In 2003, he co-authored a role-playing game called GURPS Cyberpunk. He spent 6 years leading security design for a major gaming company. He published technical documentation that shaped how a generation of security professionals thought about network vulnerabilities. And all of it, every single bit of it, came from a blue box he built for $11 on a kitchen table in Austin in 1983. AT&T, the company that couldn't protect its own internal systems from a teenager, spent $150 billion being dismantled by antitrust regulators in the early 1980s. The Bell system that Loyd mapped and documented inside out ceased to exist as a legal entity in 1984. Its children eventually remerged into what is now AT&T Incorporated, a completely different company wearing the same name. The original AT&T, the one with the Flaw, is gone. The Hacker's Manifesto is still read today. Posted on servers Loyd has never heard of. Printed in textbooks, quoted in academic papers about digital civil liberties and the ethics of security research. The 23 paragraphs written by a handcuffed 20-year-old on a legal pad in a Secret Service holding room at 11:47 p.m. have outlasted the corporation he exposed. Here's the question that stays with you. Loyd Blankenship found the most important vulnerability in the history of American telecommunications, a flaw that left emergency services, military communications, and every private phone call in the country technically exposed. And he never used it for anything except proving it existed. AT&T never publicly acknowledged the exposure, never thanked him, never contacted him. The Secret Service arrested him for $15,000 in free phone calls, while the company sat on a $150 billion infrastructure that a teenager had walked through like an open door. Who protected America's phone network? The agents who arrested him? The executives who never found the flaw? Or the 18-year-old who found it, documented it, and posted it where someone would eventually read it? AT&T had 22 subsidiaries, 1 million employees, and 100 years of experience building the network. Loyd Blankenship had $11 in parts and a kitchen table. Depends on who you think won.